Hi, I wanted to take you into one of our final days here that we're going to use to talk about York County's role in different wars in American history. And today's topic is going to be about York County's role in World War One. And tomorrow is going to continue this and take us into World War Two. Now, York County paid a price in World War One, just like we paid a price and served in every single major American war in our country's history. Our objective here is to determine the role that York County played to serve and sacrifice for our nation in World Wars One and Two. I will start off by saying from this first slide here that York County proudly volunteered for service in World War One. We had 6,000 York County men and women that served in different capacities. We also gave a significant amount of money in purchasing Liberty Bonds to support our men and women. We also did many different things, such as conserve food so we could have something to send over to our soldiers that were fighting over in France. And as you see on this slide here, that York was only expected to have 5 citizens per day volunteer and sign up for service. We actually averaged 62 signups per day. Yorkers were soldiers, nurses, Red Cross workers, ambulance drivers, and everything that there was as far as service goes within our military and within our different forces that were helping our soldiers in World War One. But York County proudly volunteered, proudly served, went beyond that normal call of duty as far as the entire county goes. We were only expected to have so many men and women serve, but we far surpassed that. Now, what you see here on the slide, you see Bob Huffman, who was a proud World War I veteran, but you also may have heard of this guy for being the creator of York Barbell and one of the U.S. weightlifting coaches back in the 1930s and 1940s. You're going to find out more about this guy later, but he actually proudly served in World War I. And Jeanette Zinn has a place in my heart for what she was and the life that she led that was entirely too short. You're going to find out about her later, but she was a World War I nurse. Now, in World War I, we had 196 Yorkers that did not make it back home. That includes the guys you see on the top right, Harry and John Withers. They are both killed by the same exact cannon shell on September 6th of 1918. And you also have George Wood, who's memorialized at the York Fairgrounds that you see in the bottom right of the screen. And he also tried to fight and support our nation and was killed in action. All of these guys, Harry and John Withers, George A. Wood, and the next couple people you're going to see, they were all part of the offensive, the attack that helped the American line win World War I and helped us make a mark for our nation as being one of the leading nations throughout the entire world. World War I put the United States on the map as being one of the leading nations, one of the most powerful nations on the face of the earth. And it's their sacrifice that did this for us. So we owe something here to Harry and John Withers and to George Wood for what they did for our nation in putting us in a position as being respected and being a powerhouse and a nation among nations. The same thing goes for Ervin Scheffer. Ervin Scheffer was actually extremely successful in his attack, and he earned the Distinguished Service Cross for what he had done against the German line. But eventually, after taking a German trench, he was struck by an enemy bullet and died in the war. But he, like all the rest before, served during what we call the 100 Days Offensive, where we finally pushed the Germans back to the point where the Germans were ready to give up the fight and surrender and end World War I. Another person to mention here is Rodney Pollock. He also was attacking the Germans, and he had a fantastic attack as well against the best German troops called the German shock troops, where his unit captured 205 of them. But eventually, Pollock was killed in action, just like all the rest of the men that are mentioned here. I mention them because of what they sacrificed for us. They paid the ultimate price of giving up their lives in the war, but they put our country in a position of betterment where, again, we were considered to be a nation among nations, one of the leading nations in the world, because of what we did here. We came into this war looking like we were kind of a second-class nation. We come out of it as a powerful, powerful nation, thanks to what these guys achieved as they finished the war and allowed the Allies to finish on top. York women also supported, very, very much so. We do not have as many nurses serving within World War I as we do in World War II. We had 20 York nurses that served. One of them was actually just completely extraordinary, and that lady's name is Marie X. Long, and she was the first ever American female laboratory technician. She would diagnose different illnesses, different problems that people were having. She would help the doctors prescribe different medicines that would fight those infections or fight those illnesses and would help them save their lives. But a fantastic individual there, Marie Long. And I'll come back to the female that I started off saying about how she has a special place in my heart. Jeanette Zinn, a young female who was just starting out her professional life in the 1910s, had just graduated from York High and was a stellar student at York High and also one of the editors of the school newspaper. Then she ended up working in a pretty prominent role for a clothing company in York. The war broke out. She felt so inclined that she decided to recruit friends of hers and other females around the York area to develop a military drill team that included 100 women. And they actually got a sergeant to train them up, teach them how to shoot rifles, teach them how to march, teach them how to use a saber. And these females actually formed their own regiment. Now, they never got service, but they were really ahead of their time because you think like females today serve, but back in 1917, that's not the way it was. And so these females were not called for service, but she wanted to make sure that these females were ready just in case our country was desperate enough that they would allow females to serve on the front lines. And so a really, really cool thing that she did by heading up this committee or this group to try to enlist females or at least train females just in case service was necessary. Now, what she did do in World War I is she signed up for the Red Cross and she was sent over to France to help our soldiers in 1918. And sadly, only 10 weeks into her time there in France, she caught pneumonia and passed away. So she died in France, sadly, a life that was taken way too soon. Another thing that women around York County did that seriously helped the cause was even though the nation did not require food rationing, it was encouraged for us to cut back certain foods so that we could send some of that stuff over to our soldiers in France. We saved in York over 20 tons of sugar and 315 tons of meat so we could send those things over to our soldiers that were fighting in France. And so we buckled up and tried to make sure that we were helping our soldiers as much as possible by making sure we could send the appropriate foods over across the sea to them so they'd have full bellies so they could fight for us. And then one more amazing thing, and I think this one is perhaps the most ridiculous of all. Our country asked for the entire nation to buy war bonds, to give our country a loan during wartime so that we could buy guns, so we could build tanks, so we could build planes and do everything necessary to support our military, support our fighting soldiers. And so they asked our country, and specifically here, asked York County to dig into their savings accounts and give money to the nation and buy Liberty bonds to support our soldiers. We dug into our pockets and dug into our savings accounts, and York County bought $30.4 million worth of Liberty bonds. Now, on average, each household bought $200 worth of Liberty bonds. If you convert that, if you use inflation methods to convert that to today, each household donated or gave or purchased $3,700 of Liberty bonds in today's money. I think about that in this sense. If we went to war today, if we had a significant war, could each household in York County donate $3,700 to our nation to support our fighting men and women? I'm not sure if that would be in any way possible. Most people don't necessarily have $3,700 just to give, to donate to any kind of cause. So these people were digging into their savings accounts and giving everything they possibly could to try to support our soldiers in this time of need. Now, altogether with Liberty Bond, as long as your country survives, you will get that money back plus a little bit of interest after the war, but you never know. If our country loses, you may never get that money back. So these people were willing to put their money where their mouth is and say, we're going to support our country in this time of need. And they dug into their pockets and gave to our country a ton of money. Now, when the war ended, we wanted to celebrate like crazy. And so we threw a humongous parade down down Market Street in York. And we had all of our soldiers, our veterans that came back. We had them parade down the street. We brought out everybody that led our Liberty Loan Drive, our food rationing drive, our Boy Scouts, our Girl Scouts, and all the school children in York were able to parade down the street. And we had band performances, speeches, floats, but they rolled out the red carpet and had one great party for these returning soldiers to make sure that they knew that they were appreciated. So altogether, we sacrificed, we served, we helped our country make that last charge to try to win this war against the Germans and put the United States on the map as one of the leading nations throughout the world. But a beautiful, beautiful thing. and we do the same exact thing in World War II, and that's what's going to pick up tomorrow. So I will see you then.